Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Better Than Rich Show. I'm your host, Andrew Biggs, and I'm here with my co-host, Mike Abramowitz. Mike, how you doing today?
Feeling good. Happy Sunday.
Yeah, same to you, man. Good to be here. And our topic today that we're excited to be sharing with you all is all about business systems and how to create systemization in your business. We're going to define what a system is. We're going to talk about the Better Than Rich system for systems. And in general, just teach you guys how to actually create a business where where your business is running instead of the business running you. So I'm excited to share some stuff with you, and I know Mike, you are as well. Mike, what are you most excited about today before we dive into the specific content?
Yeah, just the ability to go from a business operator to more of like a CEO is been life-changing for me. You know, it's funny. My wife Lindsay said, "Do you have work today?" And I was like, I could, but the people in the systems are kind of getting things done right now. So I guess yes. I'm technically I'm working, but or the business is working, but I'm not necessarily involved in the process right now because people and systems are running it. So I think the more that we can teach that and expose people, that is exciting.
Totally. I mean, I think it's a very common trap for entrepreneurs, for business owners, even for 1099 independent contractors and in any sort of field, whether it's real estate or insurance or any sort of direct sales, where, they don't make any money unless they're working. And ultimately, if we're going to have kind of a business owner versus a business operator mindset, we need to figure out a way for the business to make us money, even when we're not working. And you're somebody that I watched, really do that really well, starting, probably a few years ago. You got really good at it. And then, more recently, you've gotten great at it, in my opinion. I mean, you're at a point where in your busiest season, I was able to watch you step away from your business for a couple weeks, if I'm not mistaken, and not really be involved too much, go on vacation, and still have a really successful time. What am I missing there? Am I getting that right?
Yeah. So Lindsay and I took an 18-day road trip. It was only supposed to be 1 week, but the business was doing well. And obviously with Vector and Cutgo, we recruit. So we were getting 100 people set for trainings, and we were doing $70,000 to $80,000 sales weeks. And I was able to run it from my cell phone, or from my computer or my hotel room or from anywhere. And what was really fun is for the week, the first 7 days, I really wasn't involved at all. I was pretty much off the grid. So that's why I was like, damn, they're doing well without me there. Let's just stay on the road. So we just extended the road trip for another, week and a half. And the systems and the people were really able to get things rolling. What's fun is that was more of an experiment of all the things that you taught me last year in November. So I didn't really know what I was doing. They didn't really know what they were doing. Is very much like fire, and then we'll like aim later. And the fire worked. It worked. It was effective. But now we're going back to the drawing board to kind of like poke at some things and redefine and refine some of those systems through a lot of what you're going to discuss today with the Ds of Systemization, as we continue to document and continue to just poke holes at what was working, and it was good, but could it be better? Could it be more scalable? Could it be more simplified? And that's what we're excited about right now.
Awesome. And I think as a starting point, I really want to give my definition of what a system is. So if you're playing along at home and you're taking notes, or even if you're not, you want to pull up your notes app, a system, as defined by Better Than Rich in our community, is a series of processes, policies, and technologies that aid the business towards its initiatives. So I'll say that again: processes, policies, and technologies that aid the business towards its initiatives. And it's kind of like the combination of processes, policies, and technologies in various forms, in various shapes and sizes and scopes, that work together to kind of create this machine, right? We want to figure out, how do I create like a money-making machine in my business, and where it's like, okay, if I just have the right processes, policies, and technologies, maybe every once in a while I need to check on it, but for the most part, it should be able to operate without me. And that's really what we're aiming for. So, we can go through and talk more about what a process is, what a policy is, what a technology is, and then dive into the 5 Ds. But what are your thoughts on this, Mike, as far as the definition is concerned?
Yeah, the what's in it for you is how nice would it be for the business that you're in? Doesn't matter what kind of business you're in. Like my dad owns a plumbing business. And if my dad goes on vacation, his business goes on vacation with him, unfortunately, because he doesn't have the process, the policy, and the technology in place for it to run without him. I would love for my 79-year-old dad to be able to have these things in place, but unfortunately, teaching him how to set this up is a little bit more challenging for him than it is for me. But it's just, but for you that is listening, that means you have some sort of technology because you're listening to us right now. And this could literally revolutionize how you approach your life and how you approach your business. Because if you can capture some of this content, you could position yourself to do other endeavors or grow your business even more. Even if you're a sole proprietor, independent contractor, a lot of this content is going to be relevant.
Absolutely. And so what is a process? A process is a series of if then statements, right? So if this happens in the business, then do that. It's kind of like it's a handbook, it's a flow chart, it's a guide for anybody who's working inside the business. We really want to try to figure out a way to have a process for almost everything, or at least everything that feels, sufficient enough to actually have a process for. Now, sometimes people play devil's advocate. They, Andrew, you can't have a process for everything. Come on. Not everything can be written down in black and white in a flow chart. And I say to that point, yes, absolutely. You are correct. There are some sort of like situational management moments where there's no playbook, right? That being said, I tend to think that there's a lot more, situational moments that can be planned for and can be foreseen, and a handbook can be created for them than we tend to admit. And it just takes a lot of work to put those flowcharts together and to put those playbooks together. But really, you need to be thinking about what are the different scenarios that come up in my business frequently, and how can I teach my people how to use these if-then statements to know what to do. It's Sunday, there's football going on. I'm sure that the coaches have a series of, plays for each scenario, right? If it's 4th and goal, right, from the 1 yard line, they have a certain set of plays that they might choose to run based on the circumstances in the game. If it's, 2nd and 25 because of a penalty, they're going to pick a very different play. And so they have if-then sort of statements. Some of them even have if-then statements for, when to punt or when to go for it or whatever. And so thinking about it that way is a really good idea. Also, a lot of times I use like big business for this as an analogy. So it's just at McDonald's, why are they so successful? Because, and whether you like their food or not, they have a system down that really works, right? And so they know that every single time, they put the fries down for a certain period of time, they pull it up, they let it rest, they salt them in a particular way. And because they're so meticulous with the system, whether you like it or not, they're able to pay people minimum wage or close to it to do the job, because they've made the job so simple that it doesn't require complex thought to solve that problem, to salt the fries, to drop the fries. So if you would like to save money on labor costs, this is a great way to do it. Or if you have really talented people, free them up for the more complex work and let, less talented people do these roles, of which there are plenty in the marketplace. So Mike, I see you nodding along. What's coming up for you?
That last thing of what you just said, I mean, there was other things, but that last thing of if you have talented people, making sure that you put them in roles that they can use their talent. And, for me right now is we've had our talented people do things like signing in trainees for onboarding, like just doing spreadsheet, like they're on Zoom, taking their name and type into a spreadsheet for attendance. Like they need to be having conversations with people. They need to be doing things that have to involve interaction, not data entry. So now it had to get done, but the system is now Google Forms sign-in sheet. They sign in, virtual assistant takes those sign in the Google form, the Excel spreadsheet, takes those and does attendance. So that way the more qualified manager can have conversations based upon the information that's on the sign-in sheet versus just collect or enter who's signing in. So that way we're more impactful with our best people. Very, very small adjustment, but really relevant to what you just said.
Absolutely. And you just want to think about this, anytime someone who's worth more is doing a job that is worth less, right? So if you as a business owner are doing $5, $10, $15 an hour work, that's not good business practice, right? Someone else should be doing that work for you.
Unless you're teaching it. That's the little caveat.
Sure.
See, sometimes business owners say, no, I'm above this, so therefore I shouldn't be doing this work. However, if you dump it onto someone without teaching how to do it the right way, well, now you have problems. So it's a matter of being able to say, I'm going to do this work really well. I'm going to make sure that it's someone's watching me or someone's able to take this over from me really well. So that way I can start doing the other things. That's not the minimum wage work. That's teaching. That's doing it well. So that way someone can take it away from you. That's proper delegation. Watch me. I watch you. You watch me. I watch you. Then we'll discuss, debrief. You got it. Cool. You own it. And then we'll follow up. And then I'll move on to the next simple system that I need to build out.
Totally. And we're going to talk about that in section 3 of the 5 Ds of Systemization. So create a little open loop for you guys to be excited about in the future. So that's what a process is. It's a series of if-then statements. You want to think about like a computer, right? If I click here, it opens that. If I press this button, it fires up, it boots up. If-then statements is how computers work. And we want to create systems where, that's kind of how we're thinking. We're thinking like computers and creating these flow charts. Step number 2 is a policy in terms of what a system is. Now, it's really funny to me, I kind of I've had a wide ranging experience from entrepreneurs, but also in the corporate world, and was working with some billion-dollar companies and, managing a lot of really big accounts for them. And so policies, I would say, is one of the biggest distinctions between kind of like a small business or a medium and large size business. A policy is just a set of rules that have to be followed inside the organization. And I think a lot of small businesses just don't have policies, and even if it's just simple policies like, okay, when do you need to request your day off? By what date? And how do we actually determine whether or not this is a valid request? Having a series of policies about, the important aspects of your job is really important. What about performance-based policies? I know a lot of people that we listen to us are in performance-based roles, or they lead teams that are obviously in performance-based roles. So how do you determine if somebody's matching the requisite amount, right, in terms of their performance, whether it's effort or whether it's, actually sales performance or some sort of quota or output? And is there some sort of remediation plan if they're not? So policies in general, just like, simplifies things, because when somebody asks for some sort of exception, we're able to refer to the policy rather than having to be like the bad guy all the time. Is kind of another way that I see it. Mike, what's coming up for you with policies?
And that could even be if you're a salesperson and you want to create boundaries with your clients of what's as far as timing of when you're going to respond to them, or what they can expect from you as a service, from a service standpoint. So like having some sort of policy in line. So even if you're just running your own independent business by yourself, I think that's also relevant. I don't know if you want to speak to that, but I think it's relevant there too.
Sure. I mean, simple as that. It's like, policy for Better Than Rich. We don't do coaching calls on the weekends. It's a simple thing. If you reach out to me, I will get back to you, but it might be, 24 hours before I do. Simple things like that, creating boundaries and expectations. I think a lot of individual contributors struggle with this because they're on the phone with somebody, they're about to schedule an appointment, and the customer says, well, can you just like squeeze me in like Friday night at, 8 o'clock or something? And of course, the salesperson wanting to, maximize their goals for the week or the month or whatever they're working towards, kind of, says, I kind of told myself I wasn't going to do that. And, I did tell my wife or my significant other that that was going to be date night, but you know what? Like, yeah, I'll just schedule it. Right. And they just schedule that appointment and they don't have boundaries. And then all of a sudden, they're working all the time, or it's cutting into planning time or phone time or different things like that. So, just having even personal policies to say, this is, here's what you can expect working with me, even with your customers, is really important. So yeah. Anything else on that, Mike?
Yeah, to that point, that if you don't choose to create those boundaries for you, then you're no longer the business owner. So now you have a boss, and that boss is your client. So you're taking away the liberty and the freedom of being a business owner. So it's important to keep that in mind. That's like, yeah, it's the American dream to run the business, but if you're responding constantly to everything that's it's almost if you're in reaction mode, well, you're really not a business owner anymore. You have a boss, and it's just it's a different type of boss. So I think it's important for you, as the listener, to just say, what am I willing to tolerate? Like, what are my boundaries, and what is my hours of operation, and what are my expectations? Because if you don't know what those are for you, then how is anybody else going to know what those are for you? And that's where a salesperson or a business owner is going to feel like they're always working. And that's where that overwhelm or burnout or defeat or something like that comes into play. So I think that conversation needs to happen between you. And if you can't have that conversation with yourself, you're like, Mike, Andrew, I need help with that convo. Well, reach out. That's why we obviously, have clients that we work with to help them figure some of those things out for that reason.
Totally. Generally speaking, people will kind of push the boundary as far as they can get away with. I remember my old boss telling me, he grew up on a farm, and he was kind of trying to use this analogy where whenever they put up fencing around the cattle, the cattle will go around to every part of the fence and push on it and put all of their weight on it and lean against it. And basically, what they're trying to see there is, where is there a weakness in the fence, right? Like, where is the weakest point that if we lean hard enough, right, it's going to break. And so generally speaking, clients, but also employees are like that. And they're going to constantly try to push the boundaries and try to see what they can get away with. And so it's our job to kind of create those boundaries and let them know, hey, sorry, you can't go beyond this point, which is actually a really healthy thing for them to know. And it lets them know, you mean business, and it helps them grow professionally, because now they know, okay, I can't be late, right? Or I have to dress a certain way, or whatever the policies are. It's like, this is the rules, and it helps them learn professionalism more generally. So I love that analogy from my old boss of the cows leaning against it and just trying to find the weak spot. The last part is technologies, and obviously this is just a series of tools that will help you towards the business initiatives. Obviously, when we think technology, we're generally talking about digital tools, but it's worth saying that it could be non-digitally digital tools that are technologies. But for the most part, what we're talking about is digital tools. And Mike mentioned Google Forms. I run a lot of things off Google Sheets. We use Google Drive, or we use Dropbox. Obviously things like email, text message. You can set up groups and all these different things. There's even really cool automation software like Zapier that I use, where when somebody signs up for my free course on my website, it automatically puts them into my CRM and adds them to MailChimp, and does all these things in the back end so that I don't have to, right? So there's all sorts of technologies that we can use, especially these days. We're using a software right now called Ecamm Live that allows us to do all this branding and switch from camera view to camera view and kind of play around with it and have some fun and produce a show fairly easily because of technology. So Mike, what comes up for you when you think about how to use technology? Honestly, at least in your business, you're somebody who I've seen do it almost better than anyone else. What are you noticing in terms of technology, and what can people start to do to integrate more of it?
I was just about to post in the comments. I was going to say, hey, if anybody has any suggestions for technologies that you like to use, go ahead and
Totally.
post them. I was just going to put that in the comments because I feel like there are still more out there that I could be exposed to. But the simple ones that we use are Zoom and WhatsApp and Google Sheets. Those are really I would say there's the queue for our business to keep track of our calls. I mean, there's several technologies to our business, but for sure, Google Sheets has been an absolute game changer. Like condition,
Mhm.
even just within Google Sheets, conditional formatting has been a game changer. So that way we have the white, yellow, and red flags for the conditional formatting. So that way, when someone does a sign-in sheet and we have the if then, like if they put in this, then they'll either be highlighted in white, red, or yellow. So that way we can see at a glance who needs what conversation. And then all the staff knows if red for this column, these are the conversations. If yellow for this column, these are the conversations. And if white, these columns, those are low maintenance. So it's more of a voice memo. So red is probably a live reprimand type of convo. Yellow is more of a live praise type of convo. And white is more of a voice memo type of conversation where it's like, hey, keep up doing exactly what you're doing because you're on track. So it's just like that simple technology has made it much more effective for us to be able to do our coaching. And I know that's something so insignificant and small that can help many people. So Google Sheets has been critical. WhatsApp, I can't even tell you, Andrew, the last time I took a live phone call from an in call. It's just like if I get a live call, I'm like, what? And I created that boundary and that policy back in 2000 and maybe 17,
Hmm.
2016, right around when we started coaching. It was just like all this incoming calls, this reaction mode sucks. I got to come up with a system that does not put me in reaction mode all the time. And that's where it's like, okay, how can I systemize using WhatsApp communication? And now it was really fun where my region manager, so that would be Scott Dennis. So it would be like my boss's boss, if you're in technical terms, he
Sure.
sent me a text message about business. And I politely asked, I said, sir, with all due respect, if it's okay with you, can we continue this conversation on WhatsApp? Because I use my iMessage and my text message for non-business, and then I use my WhatsApp for business. So that way I only check my WhatsApp during business hours. So it's like it was kind of a little gutsy move, but he respected it because I don't check my WhatsApp unless I'm in business mode, and I do check my text messages when I'm in personal mode. So I think that's important distinction that I want to make sure. I mean, WhatsApp has been a game changer for us for sure.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I think that that's really what we're going for is like using these innovations. And Mike has completely cut out any sort of distractions or a lot of times phone calls are just interruptions, right? And it can be handled in a WhatsApp message. You can even use voice memo. You can shoot a video these days, or you can just simply text or send an email. There's just so many different things we can use these days to be more efficient. And if we're not thinking these ways and we're stuck in our old ways, kind of being the old dog who's unable to learn new tricks, we're going to get passed by. So
even an autoresponder, WhatsApp Business has an autoresponder, and that's been helpful too. So when I go travel and someone needs me, I have my autoresponder up. So that way they have a phone number and a contact person to go reach out to if it's urgent. Same thing with an auto email message, right? So, I mean, those are simple technologies, but if you're not using them, they could be really effective tools. So that way your clients or your salespeople, your employees, your staff, they don't feel like you're abandoning them, but they have some way to get in contact with someone who can help them if you're unavailable. And that, of course, comes into making sure that you have communicated that to your people ahead of time. And if you didn't communicate it to them, that you have, I guess, what would that be under? That would be a technology. It would also be a process, making sure that you have it set up so you don't lose business.
Awesome. Now, I'm guessing some of you listening hopefully all of you are loving it. I'm also guessing that some of you might be a little overwhelmed by some of this, just thinking like, wow, like how do you even start to plan this? So we're going to talk about the 5 Ds of systemization, which is, some proprietary content that we have here at Better Than Rich. and try to give you an overview. Just so you know, we put on a full 2-day event about this. I flew to New York and met with some people and gave a speech to 20 folks in Niagara on this topic, and really dove in a deep way. So there's a lot more that goes into this. So we are going to try to get through all of it, but it might be a little bit of a cursory overview, but hopefully it'll kind of inspire you to dive in. So step 1 of the 5 Ds of systemization is design. And so basically what we're saying here is we need to design what the system is. We can't just be jumping into something by the seat of our pants. This is like, it's almost like an art project, and that's why the term design is really apt here. It's like you're creating something that needs to really have some elegance, have some beauty, have some logic to it. It has to flow, it has to work. And so you really need to kind of go into brainstorming mode. You need to clear off, 4 hours in your calendar. You got to wipe off everything in your whiteboard, or get some big Post-its, turn on some good music, order in some Uber Eats and do some planning, man. And this is what the design phase is all about. It's one of my favorites because it really taps into my creativity. But it's be creative and really design something from scratch. Probably the better term from, instead of an art project, it's more like you're an architect, right? And you're architecting, this structure, this building. And it's okay, well, we would need this sort of foundation and this sort of, here's where the windows would be, and this is what the entrance is, and this is what the person's going to see when they walk into the building. Just like you're thinking, okay, well, what's the customer experience going to be like? What are they going to see when they interact with my people or interact with my business? So there's a few other things I want to say about design, but I want to kick it to you because you've done a really good job of this. What are your thoughts on this first G of systemization?
The first one is the question is always in mind is, what do I want them to feel during this interaction? So how do I want them to feel during this interaction? How do I want a rep to feel during point A to point B to point C? In each interaction, how do I want them to feel? Or how are they currently feeling? And how can I influence those feelings during the interaction? If I'm working in a sales capacity with a client, whether it's on a phone call or during a presentation, it's at each step, each pivot, each transition, how do I want my client to feel during each exchange or during each pivot? And if you can answer that question, how is my client feeling during right now at this point? And how do I want them to feel at this point? How are they potentially feeling at this point? And do I need to pivot a little bit? And that's where you can really get creative and thinking, okay, what do I want? What do I want them to want? What do they want? What do they need? And how can I influence those things? And that's where the design phase comes into play. Like to your point, it could be very fun.
Totally. So write that down. What do I want my client to feel at this particular experience? Or if you're starting, an employee experience, you're recruiting somebody, what do I want my new hire to feel coming into this experience? So it's what are your, desired outcomes is another big question, right? So what are my desired outcomes from this system? I'm guessing if you run a sales team, on the other end of this line, one thing you do is you run a team meeting at some point, right? A weekly team meeting or a monthly team meeting or something, you run a team meeting. But have you ever sat down and just listed out what are all my desired outcomes from a team meeting? And have you ranked them, or at least the top 3 to 5? What are those exact outcomes that you're looking to actually solve? Obviously increase sales, or, get people on the phone to book more appointments, or maybe it's to give recognition, or maybe it's to strengthen culture, or maybe it's to inspire them, or maybe it's, to build teamwork and camaraderie. Maybe it's to reprimand them. Maybe it's you can come up with any sort of complex list of desired outcomes, but then figure out what are your top 3. What am I really trying to create here? And then what we want to do is we want to work backwards and reverse engineer those desired outcomes. Like Mike said, how do I want my client to feel in this experience? So then we're going to reverse engineer that and say, well, if that's going to be the case, how could we best do that? And I really also do recommend at this point to be pretty willing to, there's no bad idea, right? This is really like brainstorming, and be willing to kind of design the ideal situation. And we can figure out how to implement just part of it, and kind of drip it out. I know change management is a big topic that business owners and business leaders need to always be thinking about. We can't change everything overnight, but really think about, okay, what would be the ideal scenario for this experience? You heard Mike talking about intake forms, and then if it's red, then they get this call. If it's yellow, then they get that call. If it's white, they get this. And everything is really well designed and thought out. So start with the end in mind, think about the ideal scenario, and start to put together those series of processes, policies, and technologies that would actually create the desired outcome. So we could go on this for, in some ways, a whole episode, Mike, but anything else you want to say on design?
No, not on design.
Cool. So number 2 that oftentimes gets skipped is documentation. So we have design, and the second D is documentation. And basically, just like it sounds, this is where you document everything that you just designed. And there's this important step to actually create the materials that are going to be able to support your clients or your team to actually implement the system. And too often, we train people and we kind of tell them what to do, but we don't give them any sort of reference materials. We don't give them like anything that they can go back to, any series of videos they can go back and watch. And this makes the training process really bad. Or if something's changed in the system, which happens fairly frequently in step 5, when something's changed in the system or tweaked, there's no place where that change is even noted whatsoever. So then it's like, well, we changed that policy on, Halloween. Didn't you guys remember? And they're like, no, I didn't remember. I didn't get any sort of formal documentation. I didn't get an email. Is there anything in written, was it changed in the manual? No, whatsoever. But, you just said it one day on Halloween and expected everyone to know, even though 3 people weren't at the meeting. And then, some people weren't paying attention, or they didn't think you really meant business. And now, you have a mess on your hands, right? Because you didn't document it. So documentation is really important in my opinion. Mike, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, one of the things that we do is we use WhatsApp, we use Google Docs for that, and then we have a once a week staff meeting. So I think it's important that, because things evolve constantly, so we'll communicate. If we have a live document, let's say on Google Doc, and I'm going to update it, so then I'll update the live doc. So once I update the live doc, then I'm going to go to WhatsApp and say, hey, just so you know, take a screenshot of the change. I'll say, this is what was changed, or this is what we adapted, or this is what we evolved. We will discuss at our Tuesday staff meeting. So then on Tuesday at our staff meeting, I'll say, hey, just want to make sure you all saw, are there any questions about any of the changes? So that's like the 3-step process of any type of changes. But the documentation is update the document, take a screenshot, send that screenshot and communicate it to our WhatsApp group. And then we will discuss it at our staff meeting. And I also think timing of that is important. If I want something done like right away, I have to have the right expectations for that. So it's like, if I know my staff meeting's not till Tuesday and I want to make a change for the following Thursday, then I want to make sure that I either call an emergency staff meeting to discuss it, or try to get it done for that Tuesday staff meeting. So if I know that I'm meeting with people and I want something adjusted, I don't want to wait. I got to make sure I'm communicating that in effective timing.
Totally. Which also, just to note there, sometimes when we design something, we want to rush it out because we're like very excited about it. We know it's going to be better. And also the documentation period and thinking about step 3, which is dissemination, which is essentially training. You got to really think these things through. I see a lot of people design a system and then they try to implement it like that night or the next day and try to like bombard people with it. And people are way thrown off by that, especially if you're trying to change things up frequently. So thinking strategically, okay, is tonight the night I should be implementing this new system, or should we wait a week, until my next staff meeting? Because I already changed a bunch last week. Let's give them a break here. Let's let them settle in. Using this sort of dynamic approach and really paying attention to what can your team handle is really important. And I think they really appreciate that because, then they can actually feel like they understand what they're supposed to do and that they're competent at their position, which is really important for confidence. So, Mike, you were going to say something on that?
Yeah, that's so critical because if even if the process or the new technology or anything that you're going to implement into your business is going to help bring more business, if there's not enough confidence in the people that are going to deliver it, then they're going to deliver it from a place of overwhelm or fear, or it's like, oh my gosh, I don't want to mess up, or whatever it might be, and it's not going to be effective anyway. So I'll give an example here. I just had a conversation with a new manager in our company, and she said to me, she's like, I'm going out of town this weekend. And she said, what's your best advice to get a new manager to be able to handle the incoming calls? And I said, well, there's going to be consequence. It's too late, because right now there's no such thing as delegation. You're dumping it onto them. So I said, there's going to be some sort of pain. So you're going to want to, this is what I said to her. I said, you're going to want to have a conversation with them to let them know it's not going to be 100%. This is the system. This is the formula. This is perfect. But these are the outcomes that I want you to focus on. And even though we're in a sales business, I said, if you try to get that person to be attached or drive sales, there's going to be a hit on confidence, because they don't necessarily know how to influence sales. What they do know how to influence, though, is activity that creates the sales. So you want to influence them to say, this is your role, influence the activity that creates more sales, not the sales themselves. So in our business, it's creating appointments. So I said, all you want to do is have a conversation with whoever's taking your incoming calls, is getting them back on the phone and getting to book up more appointments, and give them a number. What's a good amount of numbers? Let's say it's 30 appointments. Okay. So, hey, if you could get 30 appointments created this weekend, that is a win. Even if they don't sell $1, it doesn't matter. Just you want to get them inspired to book up more appointments and make more phone calls. And if you could do that, you're going to do a kick butt job. And if you're able to help them lock down sales, that'll be a byproduct, and we'll discuss next week. Because if they focus on sales and the sales happen to be low, they're going to get, their confidence is going to get crushed. If they focus on sales and the sales are high, then they're also going to be emotionally attached to high results, and they're going to think that's what you want, is only good results. So, which could potentially create the wrong emotion that you want for a new hire to focus on. You want them focusing on the activity that produces the results. Why that aligns with this is because the training process that we want to implement always is what is going to create user confidence. User confidence, especially for your development candidates, is so important, more important than the temporary results. I would rather have a confident development candidate, so a manager who's running my business, or a development candidate, than short-term results for the representative or the new trainee that's launching. In my opinion, I could be off on that. There might be a different school of thought, but
I agree, and that's just thinking long term, right? Which is a really important leadership principle that we teach, which is always play the long game. And I mean, I love everything you were just teaching there. It was just beautiful, and I think so many people just don't even, consider this way of thinking, right? They wait until the last second, then they try to delegate, and they wonder why the sales have dropped. Well, it's like, if you're not thinking things through and you're not giving people ways that they can succeed, ways for them to win, then of course, there's going to be a drop off, not only in the sales, but also in that confidence. And therefore, that development candidate will kind of basically be scared away. They're going to say, okay, well, this isn't for me because I tried it and it didn't work. So, let's go to number 3 here. Number 3 is dissemination. And this is where we're going to disseminate the information that we just documented. So we designed it, then we documented it. Now we're going to disseminate it, which is basically we're going to train people on how to use it. And, we talked a little bit about some, really good training principles, but just making sure that the training matches the complexity is really important. Some things you can train someone on in an hour. Other things you're going to need to train people, over the course of, months on how to become an expert at this. And so based on what you're really trying to teach them, making sure that you have like a curriculum that is going to actually cover all of the necessary processes, policies, technologies, and then that it's dripped out properly. Maybe you can just do it in one staff meeting, but maybe it's going to take, several staff meetings or several calls to action or several sort of interactions with these people. Maybe the training is partially in the classroom, but partially on the job. I tend to think that that's the best way of training, is to have that sort of happen. The third way that you could actually train people is through coaching, right? So there's training in the classroom, and then there's training where you can actually learn from one-on-one from your manager, and then there's training that's actual experience. And if you don't have a plan for each of these, then your dissemination plan is really not as sophisticated as it should be, in my opinion. Again, you got to make sure if it's a small change that you're implementing, yeah, maybe you could train someone, in an instant. But if you're trying to train them on some complex thing or how to be, a true professional and a true leader in some big way, you're going to have to think through a curriculum that's going to be more complex, and you're going to have to design that dissemination plan. Mike, what's coming up for you?
I just finished reading, a good friend of mine recommended I read The Great Leap by Gay Hendricks, and he talks about the upper limit problem for CEOs, and it's a fantastic read. And one of the concepts that is really talked about is this concept of like beginnership, of making sure that if something is new, giving yourself permission to approach it as if it's new. Even though if you're the CEO of this company and you're really successful and you've been successful in a lot of things, but you're implementing some sort of new system or some sort of new training platform or protocol, it's honoring this beginnership, this feeling of, I'm new at this. I'm a white belt at this. I don't have to beat myself up. I'm not an expert yet. And having that self-talk when you're implementing something new, especially with your new people. And I've been guilty of this, especially this fall, of bringing philosophies and principles and innovations into my business. And I'm like, there was one point this fall where it wasn't a high moment, where I was very firm and brash, even very direct. It wasn't very effective. And I'm luckily I have people that know where my heart is in my organization. But if I wasn't a thought leader, and if I wasn't a heart leader, then I probably would have had 2 people quit that day that I really care about, because I was projecting this, I was projecting shithead, my inner voice of like, we're supposed to be really good. Why are you not so good? Why are we not getting things done fast? Like that inner voice. And I was projecting some of that onto my people, because it's like, why are we doing so bad? Why isn't this getting done? How did you not have that conversation? I already taught you this before. Like any of that is not healthy. So it's important to give yourself grace and also the people grace as you're disseminating, as you're bringing new policies and systems into your organization, that there is some sort of grace period of owning beginnership, of owning the that white belt philosophy.
I love that. I love it. This concept of grace, right? Especially when someone's new, not expecting, results right away. Just because you designed it, it's going to take a few weeks, and there is a growing pain. Sometimes you actually might do worse because you implement the new system. In fact, that's oftentimes the case, that you'll take a few weeks of a hit or a few months of a hit, depending on how big the system is that you're implementing, just because of the cost of change in general, right? How much energy it takes to train, how much energy it takes to learn something new, to kind of suck at something for a while. So a lot of times you have to be willing as a business owner to sometimes kind of take a little bit of a retreat in sales or a retreat in results for a few weeks or a few months to implement something that is going to actually double your sales or triple your sales a year or 2 from now. And so it's that sort of long game, again, that so many managers get trapped in. They're just too focused on short-term results. They're not willing to actually make that trade, even though it's 100% a slam dunk trade. They just aren't willing to think long term. So anything else on that, Mike?
No, that ties a bow for my thoughts.
Cool. Design, documentation, dissemination. Number 4 is to defend the system. Defend the system. This is essentially, you need to play law enforcement with the system. You put together the policies, you put together the processes, you put together the technologies. You've taught everybody exactly what to do. They have beautiful documentation on how they're actually supposed to implement it. There's no holes in the system, or if they are, we're going to discover them, and we'll talk about that in phase 5. But this is where you just have to make sure that people are following it, right? And just making sure that people are following the rules, following the process, Are they actually doing, putting the numbers into the spreadsheet the way they're supposed to be put into the spreadsheet? And are they actually making the phone calls they're supposed to make? Are they actually reaching out when they're supposed to? All of the different ways that these processes, policies and technologies work together, we have to like kind of just play checkup, right? And play doctor and go through and be like, how high is the compliance, right? Not even necessarily the performance, but did they at least check the box, right? Are they playing by the rules? Are they doing what they're supposed to do? And this is a really important thing, because a lot of times people will implement a new system. They're super excited about it. Hey, every single week, I need you to fill this out and do this and do that. And they never check on it. And then they come back on it a month later and they're like, why didn't you guys do this? And it's because a lot of times, if I never got a ticket for speeding, I'd probably speed a lot more than I speed now, right? Because there's no deterrent. So we have to create deterrence for people to know that we mean business in creating the system. If I'm at McDonald's and I drop the fries for 30 seconds too long and no one says anything, I'll probably do it again. So they have to have systems to check on these things to make sure that the system is actually being compliant. Mike, what are your thoughts on compliance, defending, being the enforcement here in a system?
Yeah, feel versus real is the first thing that comes with me, is because sometimes we have feelings that things are good or feelings that things are bad. And then we look at the data and we look at the numbers, and it might be the same. It might be opposite. It might be close. So I think it's very important to make sure that we're defending the system with data and not just emotion. So that's why it's important to have a lot of the stats in place. So something that we do in our organization is that I had to figure out what are the data points, what are the numbers that I need, and I want to make it as easy as possible to get those numbers. And I also want to make sure that I know what are the main numbers. It's not just busy work. Like these are the key result areas that move the business. It's not busy work. Mm-hmm. So it's like, okay, these are the numbers I need each day. So I have them update a WhatsApp group each day. So it's like maybe there's 3 numbers that they update a day, depending on the department. These are the 3 most important KRAs. So if they are updating the KRAs, then my virtual assistant takes those and puts them into a spreadsheet. I want to make it easy for my managers. And then my virtual assistant could do all that, the data entry stuff, because they're always at their phone. For my staff to go to the spreadsheet to update it, it's too long. Pull up their phone, go to WhatsApp, put the numbers in, no big deal. And I already sent them a template. So that way at our staff meeting once a week, or if it's like a few days in a row, I could take a screenshot of the spreadsheet, send it to them and say, hey, this is 3 days in a row below the standard. What's going on? So I don't have to wait a week. I have the data. It's in front of me. And even better, they found the data. They saw it. There is a level of ownership and autonomy versus me just putting it in front of them. So that way there's some level of ownership there. I take the screenshot. Let's have a conversation about it. And just by having awareness, what gets measured and what gets focused on is going to get some sort of gains, and it's going to get some sort of attention.
Totally. That is like a masterclass right there in enforcement of the system. And it doesn't even mean it has to be harsh enforcement. Just sometimes it's just letting people know that you're aware. I used to get so many different reports at my old position. I got probably 800 emails a day, if you can believe it. Now, a lot of them were reports. So they weren't necessarily like the ones I had to actually respond to. I'd maybe respond to like 50 out of 800. But it was like a lot of data was coming through, right? Which, by the way, in the design phase, you need to design your reporting system and your analytics system. It's so important. Mike used the term KRAs, key result areas. Some people use KPIs, key performance indicators. Whatever your KPIs, your KRAs are, whatever you are using to as far as the metrics, that needs to be designed in the design phase. And how are you actually getting that data? And how are you ensuring accuracy of that data? And is it the most important data that you could have? And it's not noise, right? And is it actionable? So then all I would do is with these reports, I would look for what I call red flags and green flags, right? And it's just, okay, here's a red flag. Somebody's below the performance standard for 3 days in a row, is to use Mike's example. So then I fire off an email. Hey, what's happening here with so-and-so, right? And, just applying a little bit of pressure to help them see, like, I'm watching and this is below the standard. It's below the standard. You should be watching this as well, training other people to look. So then next time I don't have to send the email. My middle manager sends the email, and we start to actually condition these sorts of just enforcements on the standards. So that's red flags, right? Or if there's something egregious, we used to actually create red flag reports. So it was called the red flag report, and it would bring up the 10, red flags in my organization for the day that needed to be addressed. Well, that's great, because instantly it's telling me where there's holes in the data, where the metrics really aren't supposed to be there. Now, sometimes you investigate the red flags and you say, I always give the people the benefit of the doubt. Hey, what happened here? And sometimes they have a really legitimate excuse. Now, if I see a trend on that, obviously I'm going to step up my enforcement. Just like a repeat offender who speeds is going to get a harsher, a bigger fine, right? And eventually lose their license. Now, the other thing was green flag reports. And it's like, okay, who deserves praise? Who deserves recognition today? And how can I actually make sure that I'm using this data to not just, play bad cop, but also play good cop as well? And then I'm shooting off emails and saying, hey, congratulations, so-and-so, you're rocking right now. Keep it up. If you keep doing this, you're on your fast track to a promotion. So proud of you, and we would use it to also determine who we should be promoting inside the organization. So red flags and green flags is really what you want to be looking for out of the data. Mike, anything else that comes up for you on this?
No, not anything more than what I already said.
Awesome. So design, documentation, dissemination, defend, and then the last one is to develop, which is really, to optimize the system, to iterate upon the system, to make it stronger. Because no matter how good of a job, no matter how well you design something in the design phase, typically there's going to be little blind spots that you had that you just didn't think about, or little processes that you didn't put in place, or scenarios that you didn't account for. And this is where the develop phase comes in, where it's time to actually look at what's working, what's not working, and then try to actually shore up what's not. So, and where you need to actually make tweaks in the system. Mike, what are your thoughts on iteration, optimization, developing systems? I remember you putting in a big new system this fall, and then also recognizing, oh man, one little part of this is not going well. Some of it I really like, but one part in particular is not going well. We need to make some major tweaks here. Even though we thought from the design perspective it was going to work, hey, it's not working. So we got to make some changes. What are your thoughts on developing systems?
Yeah, patience is the first word, and willingness. Set the ego aside, because I spent, I don't know, too many hours, half a day. 6, 7, 8 hours more, creating all of what we just talked about, putting into practice, putting into place, and then the results weren't there. I saw some holes in the ship, and due to that, and due to seeing and being aware of what some of those holes were, we had to enhance. And it wasn't like we're going to throw away the entire thing. It's like, okay, what is the easiest thing to change or enhance that's going to have the least friction, that's going to have the least amount of friction? So we started there. And then then it was the next one, and then the next one. And it's been a process. We're still in the process of of changing it and evolving it. But we wanted to make sure it's set up with the least amount of friction to not have, again, the confidence be compromised. So, and I could go into specifics with that if it's necessary, but I think that's the willingness, the patience to be able to do that is to make changes and adapt is sometimes really tough, but it's also going to create the outcomes that we want long term.
Right. This is just a fact of life. We always need to be tweaking and iterating and kind of moving some things around and improving things. That said, you really need to practice discernment to know, when do I just make tweaks and when do I scrap the system wholesale, right? Basically, it's, that's the national conversation right now, right? We're 2 days away from election day. There's some people who say the country is mostly good and we just need to make some tweaks and to make it better. And there's some people who say we need to scrap this thing wholesale. And that's basically who you're voting for, depending on your worldview on that question. And it's like, well, most of the time, right, in a business context, we want to be making tweaks, right, because of the major cost of change. but also you need to know when is it time to scrap something wholesale and to start from scratch. COVID in particular has been a really interesting opportunity for people to start some new things from scratch, right? And if you haven't used COVID as an opportunity to start some things from scratch, you really should, because you might be able to increase your business going virtual, right? Or you might be able to cut costs dramatically by going virtual. There's so many different things that you could do by embracing technology more so than you had before COVID. And maybe it's out of necessity now, but maybe it's the way we should be doing things going forward, because I'm making twice as much money and I'm spending half on my expenses. Well, hey, that's a no-brainer from a business perspective. So making tweaks is so important. Generally speaking, it's like, don't try to change something wholesale in the middle of a busy period. Do it during the slow period. Don't try to change something wholesale if you just changed it wholesale. So for instance, you put something brand new in place a month ago. Now's not the time to launch a brand new thing as well. Let that one really mature, right? And make tweaks on it. So these are just some different ideas around developing and iterating, but it's basically just looking for where are the holes in the ship and constantly making tweaks. So if your metrics are off by 8%, how can we move it to 7%, 6%, 2%, and so on and so forth? Mike, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, and keep in mind that this is what separates the good from the great. I mean, you think about like Pier 1 Imports just went bankrupt recently, and they're retail. And then you think about the companies and the investors that just bought the company when e-commerce, so took retail, moved it to e-commerce. And by the way, online furniture is like $680 billion a year. So online shopping, so like Wayfair's huge, and it has like $6 billion, just to kind of give you an idea. So it's like 10% is Wayfair, and there's a lot. So the owners of Pier 1 Imports, the new owners, said, let's go e-commerce. I don't know if they completely scrapped retail, but let's go e-commerce. Let's see what we can make happen. Let's vamp up, double down on this. And they increased profits by like 3-4 million in their first 30 days. 30 days. So they went from bankrupt to increasing profits by 3 to 4 million in 30 days, just by willing to develop and innovate and change and adapt something that wasn't working and making it into something that does work. So it's just one of many examples that you could find, to Andrew's point, to your point about adaptability during COVID. And there's so much evidence around us where we can find how terrible businesses are doing because of this. And then there's a lot of evidence of how great business leaders responded to this, created a lot more jobs, created a lot more opportunity for people, and stimulated the economy due to willing to develop and innovate and enhance what already was.
Love that story as well. So to recap, the 5 Ds of systemization are design, documentation, dissemination, defend, and develop. So if you can implement these into your business, you are going to be able to systemize your business. You're going to go from being business owner to business operator. Your business operator to business owner, and having a business where you can make money even without being there. The last thing I'll just say is, this is a skill, and the more you practice, the better you get at it. Also, the more it's modeled for you, the better you get at it. So, I don't think we've, thrown any sales pitches out there, Mike, just yet. 10, 15 recordings in at this point. But I'll just say that, a big part of what we do is we actually roll up the sleeves with people and help them design these systems and help them put in place these two processes, policies, technologies, and create that. So if you want to learn more about that, you can go to betterthanrich.com, sign up for a free call with us. Again, it's totally free. You'll get value from it either way. And if it ends up that'd be a good fit for us to work with you on that, then all the better. I have people coming in. I just had someone else talk to me saying, hey, I want a private session. I'm going to be flying to Fayetteville, Arkansas just to meet you. And we're going to spend 2 days and we're going to redesign my entire business heading into 2021. So a lot of times people want, these block sessions, or they want big Zoom sessions with myself or with Mike and I. And if you want some of this to really be able to systemize your business, we're here to help you. If not, no worries. Run with what you just learned and do it on your own. So that's all we got for today. This has been fun. Thank you so much, Mike. I hope you have a great rest of your Sunday. Thanks everyone for joining. And remember to leave today better than you found it. Thanks everyone.